We are able to capture CO2 from the atmosphere using machines. And hundreds of companies are making businesses around that, especially in the US, where the government is giving them billions. Wait, maybe it's not exactly how it works. The brand new technology we'll talk about is direct air capture. But before taking a closer look at the technical, economic, environmental, and social aspects of the technology, let's take a step back and let's look at what this technology tries to prevent. What is the intellectual pathway, the causal chain that leads us to think that removing CO2 from the atmosphere could be a nice idea? Let's start by the basics. In 2024, approximately 38% of the world's population either believe that climate change isn't real or that it is not caused by humans. However, the climate science consensus detailed by the Intergovernmental Panel of Experts on Climate Change is utterly clear. Human activities, principally through emissions of greenhouse gases, have unequivocally caused global warming. Climate change has currently reached a 10-year average of 1.19 degrees compared to the pre-industrial average. So, climate change is principally driven by human greenhouse gas emissions, including carbon dioxide and methane, which are mainly due to the burning of fossil fuels, coal, oil, and natural gas. So, human greenhouse gases emissions rose almost every year since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, reaching 53 gigatons of CO2 equivalent in 2023. Historically, rich countries have been the main emitters of greenhouse gases emissions per capita and are, therefore, the main responsible for climate change. Climate change has always existed due to climate natural variability. However, the current human-induced climate change is significantly different because of its unprecedented speed, 0.19 degrees per decade between 1980 and 2020. This high rate, among other factors, makes climate change dangerous. Human-induced climate change has caused widespread adverse impacts and related losses and damages to nature and people. These adverse impacts are numerous and affect crop productions, infrastructures, key economic sectors, mental health, displacements, infectious disease, etc. These impacts are mainly due to climate-induced or climate-affected changes like increases in hot extremes, sea level rise, or glacier retreat. Climate change is therefore seriously harmful for the ecosystems, but also for us, humans. We shall also note that the intensity of these impacts are highly unequal, and countries, communities, and individuals that contributed the least to climate change are overall the most impacted, which raises questions about climate justice. The more the climate will warm, the more severe will be the impacts. This is a positive but non-linear relationship, as tipping points can worsen the consequences of climate change, leading to abrupt or irreversible changes. If climate change is a global threat, plenty of solutions already exist. Generally, solutions are divided into two categories: adaptation and mitigation. Adaptation can be described as, in human systems, the process of adjustment to actual or expected climate and its effects in order to moderate harm or exploit beneficial opportunities. It can refer to actions such as improving home thermic isolation in areas subject to extreme weather temperature, or the development of crops that are more resistant to floodings and heat waves. Mitigation, on the other hand, refers to a human intervention to reduce emissions or enhance the sinks of greenhouse gases. Some of the best mitigation options by potential contribution to emission reduction and by lifetime implementation costs can be, for example, to develop solar panels and wind turbines. Among the mitigation options, solutions that aim to take CO2 out of the atmosphere are called carbon dioxide removal technologies, or CDR. Taken as a whole, CDR technologies appear to have a crucial role to play in the climate transition. Quote, the deployment of carbon dioxide removal to counterbalance hard-to-abate residual emissions is unavoidable if net zero CO2 or GHG emissions are to be achieved. Numerous CDR techniques already exist. They can be divided between land-based and ocean-based solutions and chemical-based and geochemical-based solutions. Each of these options have their own advantages and disadvantages in terms of stage of development, scalability, overall cost, economic and environmental efficiency, environmental drawbacks, and social political impacts as underlined here. This video will focus on the CDR called direct air capture and its development in the US, as it is currently one of the most popular technologies in the country in terms of number of ongoing projects. DAC technologies are an area where both public and scientific interest is growing fast in recent years, as proven by the increasing number of Google researches on the topic, casein existed before 2019, and 3 to 4 times higher today than in 2020, as well as the growing number of scientific publications and patents around DAC. Research on the technology was historically very niche and started to progressively gain importance in the mid-2000s. If the development of DACs appears to be fully positive at first sight, helping us reduce CO2 concentration in the atmosphere and therefore limiting global warming, major challenges remain, including questions regarding scalability, overall cost, public acceptability, and democratic implementation processes. This video will try to evaluate these challenges, their solutions, as well as the assets brought by the technologies in itself, and compare to other options. Indeed, in order to prioritize the solutions most conducive to achieve a sustainable world, the relevance of developing DAC technologies must also be assessed in the light of capabilities and characteristics of other CDR technologies and other solutions for combating global warming, notably in terms of cost, technical difficulties, effectiveness, global environmental impacts, and socio-political repercussions. As the US is a world leader in this field, we'll use the country as a case study. The first part of the video will focus on the current techno-economic development framework of the technology, while the second part examines its integration into society with particular attention to government influence and the socio-political stakes involved. To begin with, let's try to understand the technical functioning of DAC technologies. DAC technologies are numerous, and very diverse processes are studied and used across the globe at different stages of development. Among the various existing frameworks, it is common to classify DAC technologies using two main categories: high-temperature solid solvent-based technologies and low-temperature liquid solvent-based technologies. These two categories are the most used for industrial and commercial applications, but other less studied and less mature techniques exist with their own advantages and drawbacks. All DAC technologies use 3 or 4 core steps to capture CO2. There is the contacting stage, the capture and separation stage, and the release stage. In the first phase, the DAC system brings atmospheric air containing CO2 to the DAC facility thanks to large-scale fans. Then, in the second phase, CO2 can be captured using a large panel of methods. More precisely, in solvent-based direct air capture systems, air passes through chemicals that react with the atmospheric CO2 to separate the air and the CO2. Current systems use a mix of heat and vacuum to remove the captured CO2. The chemicals can be then reused to continue the DAC process, and the cleaned air is then returned to the atmosphere. Regarding sorbent-based DAC methods, physical filters are used. These filters chemically bind with the CO2 molecules, and when these filters are heated or vacuumized, they release the CO2 in the form of pure and condensed stream. In the last stage, the separated pure CO2 can be stored in the soil in specific geologic formations, preventing it from returning to the atmosphere for a long period of time. This whole process is called direct air carbon capture and storage, and it is the one emphasized by climate scientists. Alternatively, the CO2 can be commercialized and used for industrial processes to create building materials, fuels, or chemicals, but will then soon be released in the atmosphere, wiping out most of the climate benefits. Current DAC technologies have unequal environmental impacts in terms of environmental efficiency, how much CO2 they capture compared to the life cycle carbon footprint of the facility, and environmental drawbacks, how much energy, material, land pollutions, etc. they emit or consume per per amount of CO2 captured and stored. From the early days of DAC technology development until the early 2020s, when the very first operational DAC sites were set up, the effectiveness of DAC technologies as a solution with a novel negative carbon footprint remained highly uncertain. However, nowadays we know that this is technology possible, as proven by the creation of the first operational sites and the assessment of their overall carbon footprint. Most of the carbon emissions come from the energy required to power the facilities, and more especially from heat requirements. Nowadays, 54 sites are said to be operational all over the world by the end of 2024 and are projected to capture around 59 kilotons of CO2 annually. This is a major increase compared to 2023, where only 8 kilotons of CO2 were captured thanks to DAC. This major increase is expected to continue in the following years, reaching 6.5 to 11.5 megatons of CO2 in 2030. That is to say 150 times more than today, but still far behind the 80 megatons of CO2 projected in the optimistic net zero scenario of the International Energy Agency, even if that goal isn't completely unreachable. The USA already occupies a big share of the market, with 13 operational sites and 11.5 kilotons of CO2 captured by the end of 2024. The country, along with Canada, is projected to play an even bigger role, and they are likely to capture 75% of CO2 captured using DAC by 2030. Despite these impressive and promising projections, it is clear that DAC alone will not balance worldwide CO2 emissions in the near-term future, or soon enough to avoid climate change. Even in optimistic scenarios, DAC will contribute to a far less than 1% of annual worldwide emissions by 2030 and no more than 1 gigatons of CO2 annually in 2050. On top of that, high uncertainty remains on the scalability of the technology in the coming years and decades. Therefore, the development of DAC should not be a valid reason to slow down climate actions. Apart from questions related to their CO2 capture efficiency, various environmental externalities also arise from DAC sites. These are highly uneven since they may differ from one technology to another, and since scientific and industrial work in this field is advancing rapidly. Notable drawbacks include water usage, which is highly dependent on the type of DAC and local weather conditions. Specific land use, which is minimal even if there's a lack of high quality data in the literature. And then there's heat consumption and electricity consumption that I've previously discussed, and finally, mineral depletion. I haven't found any data regarding potential differences between the US and other countries on the environmental drawbacks brought by the technology. Just like for the environmental impact of the technologies, high uncertainties remain on the cost of DAC technologies, partially due to the novelty of these and partially due to differences among the technologies themselves. Other major factors influencing current and future costs include site location and the source of energy used. This is why estimates on the current and future costs are highly uneven. On top of that, there's little data on the matter, and most of the existing cost projections originate from companies commercializing their technologies, raising questions regarding data credibility. Once this has been said, most of the current estimates for current prices of already deployed facilities range between $500 and a few $1,000s. It's true that there has been major ameliorations in the last 5 years concerning the price of the technology, which is why it's important to rely on very new data. Future costs are expected to go down, but again, high differences remain in the various existing projections. Some studies focus on the projected cost in the coming years, while some studies choose to project cost in relation to the global capturing capacity. If economic feasibility could be possible, it is highly unlikely that the real prices will go below the $100 per ton of CO2 capture goal in 2050, as it is already a very challenging projection and as costs are projected to plateau between 2050 and 2075. Even if uncertainties remain, experts still agree on the fact that technology costs remain the main challenge DAC is facing right now, and that it is one of the factors that will highly influence the wider adoption of, or not, of the technology. Cost estimates are to be analyzed in the light of the projected cost of other low-carbon technologies and other CDR options in order to maximize climate mitigation per unit of financial resources invested. Indeed, it is important to prioritize investment in the most efficient options in order to avoid findings that could have been more useful for other technologies. As of today, DAC is far from being the cheapest CDR option and is more expensive than solutions like biochar or reforestation. Potential solutions to lower costs include better siting location, use of non-intermittent low-carbon technologies such as nuclear or hydraulic, intensive research focus, government funding and technical support, private funding, international approaches to include DAC in carbon accounting methodologies, as well as improvements in data collection and reporting. We haven't found any data regarding current potential structural cost differences between DAC projects in the US and in the rest of the world. The US DAC market is special compared to other countries because it is the biggest national market and because the market is expected to grow at a faster pace than any other national market, making the US a world leader. A variety of data support the claim that the US is a leader and will be a leader in the DAC market. First of all, 13 of the 54 operational sites are located in the US, making it the first country in terms of number of facilities. Moreover, about half of the 135 companies involved in the DAC production chain are US-based. This position of world leader is expected to become even more significant as most of the near-future DAC projects are located in the US, and as the US prioritizes the development of DAC projects over all other carbon capture options in terms of number of existing projects. Nevertheless, all states are not equal regarding DAC development opportunities. There are clear regional variations between states and across US cities. These differences can be climate differences, influencing the carbon capture efficiency of the facility, or cost differences, influenced by factors like proximity to a storage formation, which is the main factor, regional policies, and electricity market influence. The US is also a leader regarding research and development and equipment manufacturing. Overall, developing DAC in the US could bring the country a few dozens of thousands of jobs per year from now to 2050, including 11,000 jobs in the construction sector, 2,000 jobs in the transportation sector, and 2,000 jobs in the project development sector. The global worldwide DAC market could reach a cumulative amount of $1.6 trillion in 2050, and the US is on track to own most of this potential market. However, it is hard to analyze DAC development in the US without mentioning the key role of the government, especially since 2022, including government spendings, tax cuts, and regulatory support. This leads us to examine the broader political and social issues surrounding the development of DACs, considering that technological choices always have variable socio-political consequences depending on which technology is chosen and how it is implemented and deployed. Beyond focusing on the purely economic and technical characteristics of DAC, we will also address the social repercussions of the technology choices, as these cannot be completely separated in an impact analysis. Let's first take a look at what is the government's role around the adoption of DAC technologies in the US. The US government has made strategic investments in DAC research and demonstration projects, accelerating progress and reducing deployment costs. Landmark legislation include the Energy Act of 2020, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law of 2021, and the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Law has created a favorable environment for scaling DAC technologies while positioning the US as an attractive destination for future projects. These incentives, distributed over several years, provide long-term investment clarity. The most significant federal investments are listed as follows. First, over $7 billion have been allocated to establishing DAC hubs, incentivizing carbon capture and utilization, supporting the procurement of carbon-derived products, enhancing CO2 transportation infrastructures, and expanding geological sequestration. These spendings are mostly brought by the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. Besides that, a total of $10 billion in tax credits aiming to foster carbon sequestration and utilization while supporting DAC technology manufacturing was also established by the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act and extended by the Inflation Reduction Act. These federal investments are and will be deployed over the current decade with long-lasting impacts. These policies have yielded results. already. In the past 3 years, there has been a significant increase in DAC-related manufacturing investments, with 90% of this growth occurring since early 2023. This trend underscores the rapid upward trajectory of opportunities in this sector. In a democracy like the US, public support is a key element when it comes to the development of projects like the construction of DAC facilities. There is little research about public trust around DAC and its social implications, but we can still underline some key elements. First of all, it's important to underline that investors can be reluctant to invest in DAC in the absence of public or government support. In this context, public support is essential to the development of the technology. Secondly, public awareness about DAC is low overall, as this new technology is almost unknown by the public. Overall, the US might be a country where DAC is seen as a neutral technological solution and is supported by a majority of the people. Supporters view these systems as economically, climatically, and ethically advantageous both now and for future generations. They emphasize the severity and urgency of the climate crisis and see themselves as stewards of natural systems. However, the creation of DAC sites is not always supported by US citizens in general and by local communities. The rejection of DAC technologies stems from concerns about storage with risks of leakage and the belief that such systems create a moral hazard by perpetuating fossil fuel dependence. Concerns are also related to the belief that DAC may be too expensive and may be detrimental to air and water quality. Public opinion is also less keen to support the development of DAC facilities when they are connected, even indirectly, with the fossil fuel industries. Creating new DAC facilities will affect the US communities who live next to the said facilities. The development of such projects can be detrimental to them in multiple ways. Indeed, local pollution will disproportionately impact the local inhabitants. The use and privatization of land for projects that do not involve the locals can also be detrimental to them. On a more global scale, using the framework proposed by the United Nations Social Development Goals can be relevant to assess the social impacts of DAC projects. The only study I have found comparing social development goals and the development of DACs concludes rather negatively to the detriment of DAC technologies. Nevertheless, this analysis remains incomplete. It's based on data that is mostly several years old, which is notable insofar as they are rapid technological evolutions in the field, and the impact by category is subject to uncertainties as to the magnitude of the impacts as well as their positive or negative direction. Another global impact of the development of DACs could be, as feared by the opponents to this technology, to empower fossil fuel companies and to strengthen dependencies toward them by promoting new oil extraction methods enabled by DAC facilities, such as enhanced oil recovery. This new extraction method, as well as other commercial use of DAC facilities without CO2 storage, could be the reason why a lot of DAC startups are founded by big oil companies. In this final subpart, I'll summarize some of the recommendations I found in the literature and that aims to boost public support and fair implementation processes. But keep in mind that the subject has not been studied a lot yet. First of all, meaningful community involvement is critical to the success of DAC projects. Effective engagement begins with identifying all potential affected stakeholders and involving them in discussions from the earliest stages. Transparent processes that actively seek to incorporate local concerns and expertise ensure that projects address ecological impacts, job creation, and social equity. This is why adopting cooperative ownership models and transparent governance can ensure equitable benefits and foster public trust in DAC projects. This is even more important when taking into account the high population distrust toward local officials and fossil fuel companies. Many people view DAC with skepticism when they rely on expertise, infrastructure, or funding tied to fossil fuel industries. Ownership structures that prioritize local and community involvement not only align with justice principles, but also address public concerns about ethical governance and real impacts associated with the development of DAC. On top of that, community advisory boards could play a key role in oversight, particularly in monitoring ecological and social impacts, to ensure that projects remain accountable to the population they affect. And profit-sharing arrangements are to be considered too, as they empower local communities, providing tangible economic benefits and decision-making authority. In that same framework, indigenous consent must be respected, ensuring that projects operate in a way that honors sovereignty and self-determination. Finally, another way to gain public support might simply be to inform people on the matter by providing factual information on TAC. However, there is little data on the matter, and this method seems to be sometimes effective only on individuals that are not directly concerned by the projects, and it may even have a negative impact on the individual's opinion depending on the studies. Giving more information about the projects also creates more polarized opinions among local impacted communities. The solution to that could be to present the AC as complementary to other mitigation options, and not as something that replaces other actions. The development of direct air capture technologies in the US represents a critical component of the country's global effort to address climate change. While DAC offers significant promises in reducing atmospheric CO₂ concentrations and mitigating global warming, its success is contingent upon overcoming numerous major challenges, and it is clear that DAC's development should not be a reason to slow down climate action. Major challenges include technical scalability, cost efficiency, and public acceptance. The US government's strategic investments and favorable policies environment are pivotal in driving innovation and deployment of DAC technologies. However, widespread implementation requires not only technological advancements, but also enhanced social dialogue and community involvement to address public concerns about safety, efficacy, and economic equity. Moving forward, the US must prioritize transparent and inclusive processes that involve affected communities and ensure the ethical deployment of DAC projects. These efforts will be essential in aligning technological development with sustainable development goals, thereby advancing climate justice on a global scale. Finally, whether or not to develop DAC technologies must be conditioned by their advantages and disadvantages relating to other decarbonization solutions, such as renewable energies or other CDR options, which may be more or less effective, costly, equitable, and sustainable depending on the socio-technical and socio-economic context. Thanks for watching these videos. Don't hesitate to like or share this content to whoever might be curious about the topic, and I'd love to read your feedback in the comment section.